everyone, my name is Angela Nguyen. I'm a legal advocate with Together Against Poverty Society, or TAPS, in Nanaimo. TAPS is collaborating with the Vancouver Island University Student Union for this workshop series. Today, I'll be walking you through the basics of the residential tenancy agreement in BC and what you should know when you enter an agreement with your landlord. This presentation will hopefully help you understand your rights as a tenant and empower you to advocate for yourselves, especially if you're a student or a first-time renter. This is how to rent without regrets. TAPS is a nonprofit that has provided legal advocacy for people living in poverty since 1989 in Victoria and more recently in Nanaimo and across central Vancouver Island. We offer free face-to-face legal help for people dealing with income assistance, disability benefits, and tenancy issues. TAPS specializes in providing rights-based information and legal advocacy services. Advocates are trained and supervised by experienced poverty law lawyers. Just a quick but important disclaimer. This presentation is for general education only. It's not legal advice. Every tenancy is different, and if you need help with your specific situation, I encourage you to do your own research and reach out if needed. All the info I'm sharing you today is current as of July 28th, 2025, but make sure to check resources like the Residential Tenancy Branch's website for the most up-to-date information. You'll find links at the end of the slide or on the Student Union website showing housing resources. The Residential Tenancy Act, or RTA, is a law that outlines your rights and responsibilities as a tenant. It covers almost all rental housing in BC with a few exceptions like supportive housing and transitional housing, roommate situations, or the manufactured home rentals. The RTA sets the rules for notices, rent increases, repairs and maintenance, as well as ending a tenancy. The Residential Tenancy Branch, or RTB, is a government office that oversees the Residential Tenancy Act. They run the dispute resolution process, mediate problems between landlords and tenants, and provide resources and information on the RTA. The RTDB website has updated resources and policy guidelines that would help tenants better understand the legislation and could clarify some points. Just another disclosure, this presentation is for general information purposes only. I'd like to go over what you would commonly see in a tenancy agreement so that you can make an informed decision regarding the contract. It's your responsibility to read the fine print and ask questions if you're unsure about what the agreement says. Here are two common examples of a tenancy agreement. The one on the left is from an organization representing landlords. It's called Landlord BC. They offer resources and contracts as well as information guides specifically for landlords. The one on the right is from the Residential Tenancy Branch. It is the official tenancy agreement that follows the Act and is provided for tenants and landlords publicly. This isn't an official form from the RTB, but it does follow the same guidelines and ask for the same amount of information. They've just put their branding on it. So this is where the landlord would put their information in. If you look at the bottom section, it has landlord's agent's contact information. Keep note of this section because this is the contact you'll use if you need to talk to the building manager about maintenance or issues with your tenancy. There's also multiple spots to put in tenants information. So this will depend on if you have roommates renting with you or if they may have a separate tenancy agreement from you. For example, co-tenants are two or more people who are on the same tenancy agreement. So like on the last slide, if both of your names are on the form, you are equally responsible for rent, damages, and following those rules. If one person gives notice to end their tenancy, the agreement ends for everyone, depending on how the agreement is worded. It's kind of like a group project. If one person fails, everyone else can be affected, even if they didn't agree. Next, we have tenants in common. These people have their own separate agreements with the landlord, but live in the same unit. In this case, you're only responsible for your own rent and your own conduct. If the other tenant gets evicted or breaks the lease, it doesn't affect your tenancy. The last kind is occupants or roommates. These are people who live in the unit but don't have a tenancy agreement with the landlord. Maybe they just moved in with a friend or they're subletting a room informally. If that's the case, they aren't protected under the Residential Tenancy Act. So if there's a conflict between tenants, any unpaid rent or damages, the RTA won't be able to help you with this. You'd have to go to small claims court or something to resolve it. Basically, if you're renting with others, you make sure you understand your legal relationship with them in terms of your tenancy agreements. Only tenants with their name on the agreement with the landlord have rights under the RTA. You really don't get any of those legal protections unless your name's on the agreement. These distinctions really matter. It's not just for the responsibility of rents and deposits, but if someone's getting evicted or even wanting to make repair requests, you won't be able to dispute it with the RTB. This page is about understanding the type of tenancy agreement you're entering into. This is really important to know because it affects your ability to move out and whether you might owe money if you want to leave early. Let's start with month-to-month agreements. These are more flexible. If you decide to move out, all you need to do is give your landlord written notice of at least 1 month in advance that you're going to end your tenancy. That means if you want to move out at the end of August, your landlord must receive notice before the end of July. This kind of tenancy continues until either you or your landlord gives proper notice, but it gives you the most flexibility. With fixed term tenancy, that is what this example shows. The fixed term tenancy is when you agree to stay for a set period of time. If you decide to leave before the end of that term, you could be on the hook for the rent until the end of the agreement or until a new tenant is found. So if you are ending your tenancy in July when your tenancy is supposed to end August 31st, you could be on the hook for paying your landlord 2 months rent even if you're not living there if they are unable to find a replacement tenant. Make sure you read your contract carefully and think about whether you're ready to commit to staying that long. This page also lets you know how much rent is, what's due, and what's included. For example, this one is $13.65. It's due on the first of every month. It includes your internet, your heat, your water, gas, garbage collections, refrigerator, dishwasher, etc. It does not include things like parking or personal items. If it's not in the agreement, don't assume it's included. This might be where your landlord would put in additional moving fees. If there is a cleaning fee, for example, make sure you take a good look at this and see what you're entitled to with your rental. This page will tell you how much security deposit or pet deposit is due. It's very important to do a condition inspection when you first move into a tenancy. Take pictures, note any damage, keep a copy of it. This is going to be your main defense when you move out to make sure you get your security deposit back from your landlord. We'll go into more detail on how the process works in our next workshop, so keep an eye out and watch that video to make sure you are well protected and know what a condition inspection report really means and how to get it returned. So this will be the rest of the pages of your tenancy agreement. Please, please read your entire tenancy agreement carefully before signing it. That means every page, every clause, and especially the fine print. I know these documents can be long and filled with legal terms that you might not understand, but once you sign it, you're legally agreeing to everything in that contract. It's not just about when rent is due and the dates that your tenancy is on. It also has to do with your conduct, your responsibilities, your landlord's responsibilities, and this is where your knowledge of what your contract says can really help and empower you if anything goes wrong. In this specific tenancy agreement, there is 8 additional pages attached. It's really important for you to make sure you see every single page of the addendum because this one includes 32 more rules attached to the tenancy agreement. If you ever see the addendum missing, even though it states that there is an attachment, make sure you clarify with your landlord on what those rules are so you fully understand what it is you're signing to. You can also discuss any changes to the agreement before signing it if you find that there is an unfamiliar or illegal term in the contract. You can just read through it with your landlord to make sure you're fully understanding every single clause. This specific addendum includes the Sun Porch House rules. It has clauses for quiet hours, guest policies, or cleaning expectations. To note, it's been added may result in evictions for many of these clauses, and that doesn't mean that you're automatically going to be evicted for breaking this rule. It just means that it's a possibility, and the landlord's given themselves protections on this, so it's easier for them to argue that you've broken a material term in your agreement. But don't automatically assume that something written in an agreement is fair and legal. If a term seems confusing, vague, you do have the right to ask questions or even negotiate the clause before signing it. So I wanted to take a closer look at liquidated damages clause. Many tenancy agreements will have a different version of this clause in fixed term tenancies. Basically, this clause means if the tenant ends a tenancy early, either by giving notice, leaving without notice, or behaving in a way that forces the landlord to end the tenancy, you might owe more than just $500 as a penalty. There are some cases where the tenant would pay the $500 and any rental income the landlord loses for the unit until a replacement tenant is found. So if you leave a tenancy and the landlord isn't able to rent the unit out for the next month, you could owe that month's rental income if a replacement tenant isn't found to replace you. The landlord does have a responsibility to mitigate any losses and do their very best to find a new tenant. But for example, if they are only able to find a new tenant to pay a lower amount of rent than you did, you could owe the landlord the difference in the rent payment. If you are leaving a lease early, it really depends on your situation, but you could owe more than the $500 to that landlord. You'll need to do more research and refer to the RTB policy guideline. This would be a situation where you might want to ask a legal advocate for clarification for your specific situation. Here are some excellent resources to help you navigate your tenancy. The RTB website has guides and policies on their legislation. It gives you more in-depth explanations on what your tenancy agreement might mean. You can also call the number if you have a question about your tenancy agreement that might be illegal, unfair, or you just want to clarify that what your landlord is providing you is up to RTA standards. Track, the Tenant Resource and Advisory Center, is a great place to find template letters, guides, step-by-step information on how to advocate for yourself as a tenant. You can do the Renting It Right course, and that will give you a very in-depth explanation of the RTA. Once you take that, you'll really understand what it means to be a tenant in BC and what your rights and responsibilities are. You can always reach out to your VIU's representative for external housing. They will be able to point you in the right direction of where exactly you'll need to go for more information. This brings us to the end of the How to Rent Without Regrets. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you were able to feel more confident on renting in BC. Please continue to educate yourselves on your rights as a tenant.